I'm Benjamin Hall, and I'm searching for heroes. Well, our guest today is Kevin Briggs. Kevin was a sergeant in the U.S. Army at first. He then became a correctional officer at the infamous San Quentin prison. But after that, for 20 years, he worked as a highway patrol officer in California, where he saved over 200 people from jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. And he is one of the most remarkable people who was the first person on the scene talking to those people as they were getting ready to jump, to try and persuade them, to try and talk them back, to try and encourage them to take a step back onto the bridge. And of all those hundreds of people, only 2 of them jumped. And today, Kevin talks to us both about how he conveys those messages of hope. And most importantly, he talks about how he gets across the message that there's more to live for. Thank you for joining us today. Kevin, what a pleasure to have you on the podcast today. And thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be here. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Kevin, you're well known, and I've been reading a lot about your career. And the one thing that I come back to is that you have something special. You have an ability to talk to people, perhaps in a way other people don't. And I wondered if you could start off by talking to us a little bit about why you've been able to do that, the special quality that you have that allows you to connect to people.
A lot of it, I think, is having gone through a lot, having gone through cancer when I was 20 years old, having lost my mother when she was just 49 years old, having head trauma, heart issues, a lot of different things, to where people who helped me out really listened to what was going on and helped me through this. There's so many of us that don't have a support system, that maybe don't even believe in it. And I didn't for decades. But when these things come along, we need the support of others, and we need people to really take a little bit of time and listen to what's going on. And that's what helped me through things.
Is that perhaps one of the reasons that you decided to serve yourself?
It really is. Yeah, to get out there and help folks, whenever we can.
I wondered if we could start talking about, the Golden Gate Bridge, and your 23 years, I think you were there. And during that period, you met hundreds of people who were having mental health issues, who were thinking about committing suicide. And would you talk to us first about the first time that you were on the bridge, the first time that you met someone who was on the bridge and about to kill themselves?
Yes. And really, I had crossed that bridge many, many, many times. My father had a business in San Francisco, and I'm from Marin County, which connects to San Francisco via the Golden Gate Bridge. I had no idea about the number of folks contemplating suicide until I started working on that bridge with the Highway Patrol. But when I tell you, I had no training. I didn't know what to do, how to approach someone, what to say, what not to say. But this first time with a young lady over the rail, there's an I-beam on the other side of the pedestrian rail. And I get the call, and I'm thinking, what do I do? I'm scared. I'm thinking, if this individual jumps, am I responsible? But I get down there and she's over the rail. I don't know how to approach her, what to say, how to act. But I think she saw something in me, to be honest with you. But I look in their eyes and I can see there's a spark in there, sometimes way deep inside these folks, that wants to live, but they can't see how. And it's very brutal to look at these folks and see just the sorrow, and they don't see tomorrow. They want their pain to end. They think they're a burden to people. So I just approached with what I had, just me, and just trying to really see if she would talk to me. What can I do right now to help you? Because of course I can't fix anything. But I think with this very first individual, this young lady, and it's cold out there, it's windy, it's noisy, the traffic, it's a terrible place to have a so-called negotiation. We weren't there too long, but I think she had maybe empathy for me, seeing how scared I was for her, really. And she did come back over the rail. And what I learned very quickly was I spoke to every single person that would come back over the rail or was on the sidewalk and decided, yeah, I want to come off of this bridge and get some help. I would ask them, what did I do that helped this situation?
Hmm.
And what did I do that maybe wasn't so good or that hurt the situation? So I pretty much learned off the backs of those folks. They helped me tremendously see how I could make this better for the next individual. And I handled 4 to 6 cases a month for over 10 years. So that's a lot of people.
Yeah. It must be hard, I suppose, because you know I would have thought that you need to understand the problems and the issues that they're going through to solve them, but you wouldn't. You wouldn't understand the, why they were upset. You wouldn't understand the complexities of the relationships. So you're not necessarily trying to solve the precise issues that they're having. You're just trying to explain that. You're just trying to talk person to person without understanding exactly what they're going through.
Exactly. Even though I've been through a number of things, many folks have, I don't talk about that unless they bring it up. Like, you don't know what it's like to have cancer. Well, I do. And it was testicular cancer and it was brutal and I had months of chemotherapy. But this is about them. Folks, we need to remember this it is about them. I tell them it is not the Kevin Briggs show. Any kind of ego that you have, you need to leave that at home. We need to make this about them and trying to understand, trying to put yourself in their shoes, not to fix it, but to let them be a sounding board, or let me be a sounding board for them and just step back and let them speak.
So is it trying to just show them and explain to them that there is something on the other day that's worth living for, or is it just to say, step back, we need to just talk person to person? Or I mean, what are the actual words that you might say to have them step over again?
Well, I'm trying to develop rapport and I use just my first name. Hi, I'm Kevin. I'm not Sergeant Kevin Richard Briggs, California Highway Patrol. I want to be, you can't really be a friend right then, but I can certainly try to be. So I'm just Kevin. I want to personalize everything. And as this progresses, if they're willing to talk and build that trust, then we start digging into what is going on. And I'm trying to find a reason of hope for them, a reason to continue on, a purpose in life. So this is what this is about, allowing them to speak, giving them as much time as needed without me, my intentions or anything else seeming like, what is going on here. So trying to understand what the major issues, and a lot of them have a lot of issues. Well, let's narrow it down. Let's talk about 2 or 3,
Mm.
and then trying to find out what I can offer them. Because sometimes I think it's when we look like blinders on, I want them to take those blinders off and see everything. So how can we make that connection and maybe turn that tide a little bit for them for that day?
As well as just trying to understand exactly or give them hope, would you also talk about sort of the collateral damage of their suicide? So you would also let them know the effect that that would have on other people, because that's a key part of it too.
It is, and it depends on the individual I'm talking to, because they may think, oh, great, now I'm going to hurt everybody else around me. And we know one suicide can lead to others in that family. So I have to be careful about using that, but I have used that and it has helped me. Absolutely.
Hmm. Um, what does it do to you, Kevin? I mean, you are right there between life and death. You are trying to connect so deeply to someone and save them, but maybe people maybe don't focus on how you feel about having to live right there on the edge. That's a lot of responsibility for you too.
It is, and I try not to think about that whatsoever. I need to be there for that individual, but I say that with also the fact that if I cannot make a connection with that individual, I want to try to get somebody else to talk with them. We have to remember it is about them. So my job is to make a connection and to get them to want to live. Perhaps folks have seen, or you have seen, an individual on a video run up a fireman, a policeman, a citizen, even on a building or on a bridge, and they grab the individual and pull them over to safety. Fantastic. But here's what I want to do. I want to get them to come back over that pedestrian rail on their own or with assistance from me, not by grabbing them. It takes a lot of courage to go over that pedestrian rail. Imagine the courage that it takes to come back over that rail and face everything again. If I can get them on their own to want to do this, I think they're going to have a much better time trying to cope with everything. And, as far as longevity.
Yeah, that's really interesting because you see videos online, of course, of people trying to grab them as soon as they can. Are you saying that if you forcibly brought them back, then you're not solving the problem, you're just postponing the problem? And so you wouldn't grab them. Had you ever had to grab someone?
I have tried it, and because we were on the bridge for such a long time, this was an 8 hour ordeal, one of the ones I was with, and it is so cold and a lot of times foggy and windy and things down there. The skin got very moist. So when I tried to grab him, my hand slipped off really quick immediately. And the individual, of course, jerked back and almost fell off the bridge. But we regained all our composures, took a break. We did get that individual back over. So I made a vow to myself, I am not going to grab someone. I want them to come back over on their own. And in talking with folks afterwards, it was the right thing to do because they made the decision they wanted to live. And if they can get past this crisis, they can do another one. We're going to use this as a building block.
Yeah. And then you have gone on to develop friendships with some of them. And that's what I find remarkable. Talk about the relationship that you then form with some of the people whose lives you save.
Yes. And I'll tell you, I generally don't reach out to folks. I wouldn't even know what to say. And I think they want to forget that day. That's a very tough time right there. A very dark day generally. But I did make a connection with an individual named Kevin Briggs, and it has been wonderful. We actually do work together now.
Also, you now tour around talking in general about resilience, about how people can get through difficult times. And I wonder, your experience was at perhaps the worst level. It was levels of suicide, but you're also talking using your skills to help people who are just struggling at work or struggling with life. And would you say that the same techniques are required just to get through anything that's difficult? And what are those skills?
It certainly can. Let's talk about building a resilience. What are you doing for you? So many of us are running ourselves ragged, 2, 3 jobs, not taking care of our health, maybe away from the family a lot. And, I have a son that was suicidal and engaging in non-suicidal self-injury. All of these things while I was trying to get out there and talk to as many folks as possible. Well, sometimes we need that kick in the butt to see, what? I got to start with me and the family first. And then we can go out for others. Because if we have a happy home life, generally, we're going to do much better at work. So we need to start with ourselves.
Was that your own son who had suicidal thoughts?
Yes. And here I am flying all around the country and been out of country a whole bunch of times. And things are happening to my own son right in front of me. And I'm missing it. And I'm the guy going out talking about it. I mean,
Yeah.
It was brutal. It really was.
That's so interesting because he must have grown up seeing and knowing what you were doing and the people you were helping. And so I find that a fascinating connection that the messages that you were sharing with so many people he didn't get himself.
Yeah, he suffered from mental illness and was finally diagnosed, and he's doing much better now. But the thing is that I'm the one traveling around and talking about this and telling folks how to have these conversations. And I'm missing it at home. I'm a classic example of kind of what not to do. Start with yourself and your family.
So if someone at home does know someone who is really struggling, but maybe who isn't talking about it, what should the first step be? Like how should they approach them?
Yeah. Have a conversation. Be willing to have a conversation. And it's a tough one. But I want to tell you, have that conversation where that individual you're speaking to is comfortable. Generally not at a coffee shop, a restaurant or something, because there's a lot of people around. Think about if that was you that was struggling. You don't want to have to maybe open up, in front of a whole lot of people. Where that individual is comfortable. Hey, can I talk to you for a little bit? And tell them what you've been seeing or what you've been hearing. Tell them, I want to let you know that I'm here for you. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to try to fix anything. If you want to talk about it, I am here for you.
More of our conversation right after this. 116, or is it 16 million Americans at the moment live with depression? I mean, it's just a huge um, number of Americans. And I just wonder, from your experience, is that did that get worse over the years that you were on the bridge? Did you see society playing a more active role in helping people, or did you see there becoming more stresses? Like when you look at depression overall, which direction do you think we are going?
I think it has grown. I really do. Because
Mm.
there's so much stress. Every year seems to be more stress. And then we had COVID and that compounded a lot of things. And we don't have enough mental health folks trained in how to talk to people about this. It can be you might wait a month or 2 months to see a mental health professional. And we don't teach active listening skills in school. Okay, we're
Mm.
taught how to read, how to do math and history and things, but not how to have a conversation with someone. So I think if we went in and started teaching that to let people know, hey, it's all right to have these conversations and it's okay to let yourself go. You got to find the right people, surround yourself with good folks.
Yeah. Do you think that we should also be constantly, like throughout life, should we always be preparing ourselves for a crisis? Should we always be telling ourselves something bad may happen or I need to be prepared? Because that's something that we should constantly be doing.
I think we need to be aware of it. Not that it needs to take us over 24 hours a day, but like anything else, when you have a house, you want to know your exits in case there's a fire. If you have little kids, you want to be able to tell them, hey, here's the fire extinguisher. Here's how to get out of the house. Here's another exit out of the house. We need to be prepared.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, you also spent, before you joined the Highway Patrol, you spent 3 years in St. Quentin prison. You were a prison officer there. And I wondered what experiences that gave to you as well, because I wonder whether or not you thought that it was some of the people you spoke to, was whether it was society, like whether some of them, many of them came from, say, sort of broken backgrounds or poorer backgrounds, and whether you can paint a picture of the different people that you were seeing.
Really did. It was a lot of folks from troubled backgrounds, that grew up in gangs and they felt they had no alternative. And it always had to be this macho thing. You never show a weakness. And even when they went to prison, you don't show a weakness. You just don't. They'll eat you up. So I learned a lot because my environment growing up was not like that whatsoever. But by sitting back and listening to them, and a lot of them want to talk. And they know you really can't fix anything. But once you break that barrier, and we're not good friends, we're not good buddies, but it's like we have to live with one another. So let's get along. And to have them tell me about how they grew up and how things went to put where, in the position where they are now. It's tragic. It really is. Now, they make some poor decisions, absolutely. But I think we have a lot of work to do as far as getting kids that are in school to really understand that they can come out and talk about what's going on and try to get them some help.
But in turn, I'm sure you did encounter a number of people who had substance abuse problems. And I wonder, that must be a very different, again, you have to take a different approach to people who are going through substance abuse problems. So how would you deal and talk to those people?
Absolutely, yes. So folks who did suffer from that takes a long time to get past. Maybe a lifelong process of this. It requires a lot of patience and they break down a lot of times. So you really need to watch what you say to them and how you talk to these folks, because it is many, many times a lifelong process, and letting them know, you know what? This is what happens inside the brain, and try to explain it a little bit. And I had to do a lot of research and try to understand it. But I'm telling you, just by being a sounding board to folks, sometimes you can really make their day, even though they may be an inmate and I worked at San Quentin. We can find common ground, and they know, hey, Briggs is coming today. Maybe we can have a chat on this.
Yeah, I guess that's what it's about. It's about trying to find common ground with whoever you're talking to. I think maybe, do you think perhaps that society is losing that? I mean, do you think that, as you said earlier, we're so distracted? Is society losing common ground?
I think we have a lot of work to do. I talk about having a front porch. That front porch may be, for instance, a coffee shop. It may be your backyard. It may be going to a park on a bench. But it used to be that almost every single house many years ago had a front porch. And folks would come out and sit there, and neighbors would come over and they'd chat about everything, daily life events. You don't see a lot of homes being built now with front porches.
Hmm.
And we're missing that. People don't know their neighbors. They work so many hours and then they come home and they're tired, they're exhausted. They sit down and they watch TV or they're on social media. We are losing our communication skills.
So many times people I speak to talk about social media. They talk about the dangers of it. And it seems like such a potentially catastrophic thing for society.
I think it's addicting. And I fly a lot now, on airplanes a lot, and you go to the airport. How many people do you see looking up? Just count them when you're around. If there's 50 people around you, count how many are looking down at their screens. It's a classic example of where our society is.
Well, what would you do to solve that? I mean, if you could wave a wand, how would you try and bring people back from that? What would you do?
I'd like them to be cognizant of it. There's people around you. There's so many nice people. If you just put that phone down a little bit and have a conversation. Right now, we have so much work to do because you think if somebody says hi to you or how are you? All right, what do they want? Now they want to chat. Now they want money. No, simply saying hi to you.
Yeah.
And I've done that myself. And all of a sudden, this person at the airport, we have a half-hour conversation, and they're a fantastic, beautiful person just to chat with. So,
Yeah.
we need to hold back a little bit. Not everybody is out to get you or your money or your family.
It's so funny. So I sometimes say hi to people if I'm standing next to them in a line or something. And so many people, more so than when I was younger, seem afraid of it. They feel that you are somehow, interrupting their day, which didn't happen when I was younger. So I think that's worrying, I suppose.
It is. It really is. I would like to see it change. I got to tell you, I've done it myself. You're just so locked into your own brain and what's going on around you. And yeah.
Yeah. I know you've also did the FBI crisis negotiation course, and I'm fascinated to see what is that like? Like, what are they trying to teach you, and what's the process?
So they have names, these active listening skills that I talk about, minimal encouragers, summarization. There's a couple that I really like, validation and normalization. For instance, if I'm talking to someone and they may be going through a divorce, maybe they're getting into some trouble at work for not showing up, absenteeism or presenteeism. They have a health issue and now they have financial issues, all these things combining. Well, by normalizing that, listen, Bob, I know these different things of what you told me and what I've seen. You're going through all these different things. I want to tell you, anybody going through all of these things might be thinking about suicide. Have you been thinking about killing yourself? You normalized what that person is going through to where they think, you know what? I'm not alone. I'm not stuck in a corner all by myself. Anybody going through all this might be thinking about suicide. It may be a normal thought for that. And that allows them to open up.
What about the difference in age? I mean, again, you must surely have spoken to teenagers and you must have spoken to sort of older people. I would imagine someone younger, is it their future, their dreams have been taken away? Whereas if it's someone older, is it everything they've built is being taken away? Like that it must be very different and based on their age.
Yes, with adolescence, the front part of the brain is not fully developed until they're around 25, 26, 27. That reasoning is not quite there as we have it as adults. So they may think if they didn't make a team, if they got a bad grade, if they didn't get in the college they wanted to, or being bullied, things like this, they think, you know what, my life is over. They are only looking many, many times, 5, 6, 7 years into the future, whereas we are looking many years into the future, possibly retirement and things. So they think that their life is over, not recoverable. And I will tell you, most of the time up on that bridge, when a teenager went up there, we did not get an opportunity to speak with them. They come up and they jump. So, whereas Older adults, loneliness is the big one. Perhaps they lost a spouse, they've moved away, or they're in a different home now. A lot of factors, but I have found, and research has found, loneliness is a huge factor for our elderly.
That's really interesting that adolescents tend to jump straight away. And I wonder if you are sitting there and you are waiting and you're standing there, presumably shows that they have a lot more doubt in what they want to do. Are they perhaps also sending out help signals? Do they want someone to come and talk to them?
It depends on where we're at. I've had them a few where I've been able to talk to them, but we have had quite a few who just come up to that sidewalk on that bridge and they'll look around and then they'll just jump. So they're not even thinking, they're just thinking everything is over. And whatever has happened, that's it. It's not going to get better. They're not going to get past the embarrassment or whatever has happened. And, that's what I have seen is them just coming up, making that decision very fast, and they're up and over.
Hmm. I gather of all the hundreds of people you've spoken to, two have sadly have jumped. And I wonder if those are the two that probably stay with you more than any of the others.
They do. And it was a tough conversations. These folks were not under the influence of alcohol or drugs or anything. But I truly believe at that point, that they were suffering and they had a very negative bubble around them. They were not mentally in their right mind then, and it's very brutal to see and to go through. And then you pray for them and their families. That's something else that really drives me to do this work.
Is what about your religion and how much that plays a role in it?
It plays a role for me being raised Catholic. I don't necessarily bring it up when I'm talking to folks unless they talk about it. And I did have a gentleman one time ask me, he kept calling me officer, even though I told him my first name. He kept calling me officer. Do you think I'm going to go to hell if I jump today? And it really hit me. And I got to think on the fly here a lot of times. And I thought, wow. I said, sir, if you jump today, and I sincerely hope you don't, I want to stay with you as long as we need to here and then get you back over. But I did say to him, if you jump and you've been a good person all your life, how could you not go to heaven?
Huh. That's interesting. I mean, Catholicism would usually say that suicide would take you to hell.
Right. But you're also not in your right mind.
Mm.
And I don't want to say that as, well, the person's crazy. No, they're suffering. They're suffering so greatly that they don't see a way out. They do not see tomorrow. Can you imagine being in that position?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. You've also spoken, I know, to veterans, and I wondered if you were talking to someone who, say, has been catastrophically injured, it's not necessarily saving their life, but trying to show them that there are opportunities ahead in life, that those haven't been taken away. What would a conversation like that be like?
Yes. I like to do those in a very private manner, even more private than the usual ones, but to really find out what are they struggling with. Maybe they're just very lonely. They've come to the point to where, yes, I've lost an arm, yes, I've lost both legs. I can do this, but everywhere I go, everybody's looking at me. And I'm having a hard time struggling. I'm having a hard time financially. Well, let's hook you up with some things. I've been asked by some folks from different organizations to talk with them, and they help raise funds for these folks. I've seen houses donated to them because of what they have gone through and what they've given for this country. So it's a matter of finding out what their needs are and how maybe we can steer them in a different direction. And that takes, a lot of phone calls and a lot of things. So there is help out there. Sometimes it's hard to get or hard to find, but there is. And what ray of hope, what then can they come out and offer now? And even sometimes it's talking to them about how can you come out and go on stage and help other veterans? This is now your purpose. We need a purpose and a reason to continue on.
Yeah. You, I mean, you've obviously encountered people at the bottom, but when you look at good versus bad, I mean, do you think that there is more, the society, there's far more goodness in society than there is negativity?
I think so, but it's overshadowed by the negativity. We see it in the press, but we don't see the people helping each other so much. That'll be a little segment of that. So that's a prime example. We see a lot of stuff going on. But I really do think there's a lot of good folks out there that are doing great things on a daily basis that we just don't hear about.
Yeah, yeah. And if we had to finish up today, I think if you could send a real message, if you could send a message out to someone who was struggling, someone who really needed to turn their life around, what would that be? What would you say to them?
I want you to take a deep look inside of yourself, and I want you to start working on yourself. Okay? Maybe you've been giving out to so many people so many times, you're tired, and you just want some peace. Take time for yourself. If you need help, reach out for it. Okay? There's a number we can provide. There's a text line you can come out to. Try to get to someone that you can talk to that will listen. Okay? It took a long time probably to get to where you're at. It may take quite a while for you to get back to where you want to be. Take it day by day. Sometimes we need to even take it hour by hour. But seek some help. You do not have to go through this alone.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us today. I know how many lives you've saved, and I just hope the people listening to this can channel some of that, and hopefully they can find that similar power, that similar resilience inside them. So, Kevin, what a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It's been a pleasure.
Well, I think Kevin really laid out what is perhaps most important, what is most important in life, most important in community, and that is sometimes listening to people. Listening and understanding them is so much more important than just trying to talk and act and do things. And that's what he put to the test. And I just can't help but imagine what that's like in those moments where you are standing right next to someone and you're right in the middle of life and death and you have to try and get through to them. And just listening to Kevin there and listening to his incredibly peaceful voice as well, he was able to find a connection. He was able to show them that there are always things to live for. And I hope that everyone listening today can bear that in mind and know that no matter how tricky things are, there's some kind of strength inside every single one. And even if it might feel like you are right up against it, sometimes, and as Kevin said, taking that step back is sometimes far harder than taking that step forward. So again, speak to anyone you know who might be having a difficult time, and also know that whatever you're going through, if it's tricky at all, there is always some positive on the other side. Thanks for listening to Searching for Heroes. Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcasts Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.